The Valdris Empire had ruled over 12 star systems for 3,000 years. The reptilian race stood 7 feet tall, their scales shining like polished copper under the lights of their grand cities. They believed they were the greatest species in the galaxy. Every other race they met either bowed to them or faced destruction. Princess Zyla Ray sat in the royal palace on Valdris Prime, staring at the holographic display before her. She was 20 cycles old, young by her people's standards. Her father, Emperor Corvin the Eternal, had just announced her engagement to Commander Zethrak, a war hero from a noble family. She had never met him, but that did not matter. Royal marriages were about power, not choice. The display showed images from the war. 3 years ago, the Valdris had discovered a small species from a blue planet in the Orion Spur. Humans, they called themselves. The Empire demanded their surrender. The humans refused. Emperor Corvin expected the war to last weeks. Instead, it dragged on year after year. Zyla Ray studied the reports with growing confusion. The humans were smaller than Valdris warriors. Their weapons were weaker. Their ships were fewer. Yet they would not break. They fought with tactics her people had never seen before. They attacked supply lines, avoided direct battles, and struck from shadows. Valdris soldiers began whispering names in fear. One name appeared more than any other in the reports: the Crimson Blade. Captain Jake Morrison was 32 years old and came from a place called Colorado on Earth. Before the war, he had been a teacher. He taught young humans about history and books. When the Valdris invaded, he volunteered to fight. His city of Denver was destroyed in an orbital bombardment. Over 2 million humans died in seconds. His younger sister Claire and her 2 children were among them. Jake earned his nickname during the Battle of Theta 7. A mining colony was under attack and 3,000 civilians needed to escape. Jake and his squad held off an entire Valdris battalion for 6 hours. The Valdris soldiers reported seeing a human warrior moving through their ranks like smoke. He left red marks on their armor before vanishing. Those marked were always officers. The commanders died one by one and the battalion fell into chaos. The civilians escaped. Now Emperor Corvin had decided to end the war by capturing Jake Morrison. Intelligence reported that the human was leading a secret mission in the Brennus system. The Emperor assembled a massive fleet. He would set a trap and take the legendary warrior alive. Then he would force the humans to watch their hero kneel before the Empire. Corvin brought his daughter along to witness the victory. Zilari stood on the bridge of the flagship, the Dominion of Scales, as they arrived at Brennus. She watched the tactical display as Valdris ships surrounded a human shuttle trying to escape from a weapons depot. The trap worked perfectly. Jake's team of 12 soldiers fought hard, but they were outnumbered 50 to 1. Zyla Ray watched as the human forces fell one by one. Only 3 made it to the escape shuttle. The princess saw one of them, a large human male, take several plasma bolts while covering the others. The man fell, and the one she recognized as Jake Morrison caught him before he hit the ground. The Valdris disabled the shuttle with an electromagnetic pulse. Boarding teams captured the 2 surviving humans. The large soldier died before they could bring him aboard. Zyla Ray saw Jake holding the dying man, listening to his last words. Even through the video feed, she could see the pain on the human's face. But his hands were steady as he closed his friend's eyes. The prisoners were brought to the detention level. Zyla Ray watched from the observation deck as guards marched them through the corridors. She expected to see broken enemies, defeated and afraid. Instead, Jake Morrison walked with his head high. His eyes moved constantly, studying everything around him. His jaw was set with determination. Even in chains, surrounded by warriors twice his size, he looked dangerous. Something about his eyes made Zyla Ray's scales tingle with an emotion she did not recognize. It was not quite fear, but something close to it. This human was smaller than her, weaker and completely at their mercy. Yet he did not act like a prisoner. He acted like a predator waiting for the right moment. Emperor Corvin gathered the royal court the next day. All the highest nobles came to witness the spectacle. Commander Zethrak stood beside the throne, his biometallic armor gleaming. He had fought in 32 arena battles and never lost. He smiled as the human prisoner was brought forward. Jake Morrison still wore his battered combat armor. His face showed bruises from the capture, but he walked into the throne room without hesitation. 4 guards surrounded him, their weapons ready. Corvin spoke in the common language. "Human, you are Jake Morrison, called the Crimson Blade. You have killed many of my soldiers. You have caused much trouble for the Empire, but now you are here and the war is over. Kneel before me. Acknowledge the power of the Valdris Empire, and I will let your people surrender with honor." Jake looked up at the Emperor. His expression did not change. "No," he said simply. The court fell silent. Zilari felt her breath catch. No one refused the Emperor. It was unthinkable. Corvin's eyes narrowed. "You misunderstand, human. This is not a choice. Kneel or die in pain." Jake's response was calm and clear. "I understand perfectly. I choose to stand." A guard struck Jake with the handle of his weapon. The human fell to his knees from the force of the blow. Blood ran from his mouth. But the moment the guard stepped back, Jake pushed himself to his feet again. He stood straight, looking directly at the Emperor. The guard hit him again. Jake fell. He stood up again. This happened 3 times. By the 3rd time, Zilare found herself leaning forward in her seat. The human's face was bleeding, his left eye swelling shut. But still he stood. It was madness. It was suicide. It was the bravest thing she had ever seen. Commander Zethrak laughed. "This is the great human warrior? He cannot even stay on his knees. Let me kill him now and end this joke." Jake turned his head slowly to look at Zethrak. When he spoke, his words were in perfect Valdris language. "I kneel for no tyrant. I serve humanity, and humanity bows to no empire." The throne room exploded with angry voices. Nobles demanded the human's immediate execution. Zethrak stepped forward, his hand on his plasma blade. "Let me fight this insect, my Emperor. I will show everyone how weak humans truly are." Jake smiled then. It was not a happy smile. It was cold and dangerous. "Single combat, I accept. Let us see if you are as strong as you claim or if you only fight helpless prisoners." Corvin held up his hand for silence. A slow smile spread across his face. "You challenge my champion? Very well, human. In 3 days you will face Commander Zethrak in the Imperial Arena. The entire Empire will watch you die." Jake's smile did not fade. 3 days. I will be ready." As guards dragged Jake back to his cell, Zilare sat frozen in her seat. Her hands gripped the armrest so hard her claws dug into the metal. She had been taught all her life that humans were primitive and weak. But the warrior she just watched was not weak. He was terrifying in a way she could not explain. That night, Zilare could not sleep. She accessed the military database and read Jake Morrison's file. 17 major battles, 43 confirmed kills of high-ranking officers. Declared dead 4 separate times by intelligence only to reappear leading new operations. Before the war, he taught children about books and history. The Empire had turned a teacher into a weapon. She read about Denver, about 2.3 million dead, about a human city that once held millions, now a crater of melted glass, about Claire Morrison and her 2 children ages 7 and 4, who died in that fire. Zilare looked out at the lights of the capital city. Somewhere below, a human warrior sat in a cell preparing to die. And for the first time in her life, the princess of the Valdris Empire wondered if her father was right about anything at all. Jake Morrison sat on the cold metal floor of his cell, counting the seconds between guard patrols. 45 seconds. That was not enough time to pick the lock on the door, but it was good to know. Information was survival. Every detail mattered. Lieutenant Amy Chen sat against the opposite wall. She was a tactical analyst from California, 28 years old with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She and Jake had served together for 2 years. They had survived 12 missions together. This was their first failure. "You should not have challenged him," Amy said quietly. "Zethrak is their best warrior. You saw his file. He is 8 feet tall with biometallic armor. His plasma blade can cut through spaceship hulls." Jake continued his exercises, doing push-ups on the cell floor despite his bruised ribs. "I know what he is. But if I die anyway, I want it to mean something. Every Valdris watching that arena will see a human refuse to submit. They will see us fight until the last breath. That is worth dying for." Amy shook her head. "Kyle died for us to escape. Now we are here and you are planning your own funeral. His death meant nothing." Jake stopped mid-push-up. His jaw tightened. "Do not say that. Kyle's death meant everything. We got the data out. That weapons depot information will save thousands of lives. Kyle knew that. He made his choice." The last words Kyle Parker said played in Jake's memory. The big sergeant from Texas had smiled despite the blood on his lips. "Tell Jenny and Sophie I love them. Tell them I thought about them at the end. Promise me, Jake." Jake had promised. Now he might never keep that promise. 3 days. That was all the time he had to prepare. His shoulder still hurt from the capture. His left eye was swollen half shut, but he had fought in worse condition before. The arena would be different, though. No cover, no shadows, no escape. Just him and a champion warrior in front of millions of viewers. Amy broke the silence. "What are you planning?" "To win," Jake said simply. "Jake, be serious." He looked at her directly. "I am serious. Zethrak is bigger and stronger. His weapons are better. But I have fought Valdris before. They train for glory, for honorable combat. I train to survive. That is my advantage." Hours passed. The guards brought food, some kind of protein paste that tasted like metal. Jake ate it all. He needed the energy. Amy picked at hers, her mind clearly elsewhere. "Do you think Earth knows we are alive?" she asked. "Maybe, if they monitored the trap. But they cannot help us now. We are on our own." Late that night, footsteps approached the cell. Jake was on his feet instantly, his body tense and ready. But the person who appeared was not a guard. It was Princess Xylaray. She wore simple robes instead of royal clothes. Her copper scales reflected the dim light of the corridor. 2 guards stood behind her, but she gestured for them to stay back. She looked at Jake through the energy barrier that sealed the cell. "You should be sleeping, human. You have a battle in 2 days." Jake studied her carefully. This could be psychological warfare, an attempt to break his focus. "Why are you here, Princess?" "I wanted to see you, to understand you." She moved closer to the barrier. "I read your file. You were a teacher before the war. You taught history and literature to children. How does a teacher become the Crimson Blade?" "Your father made me into this," Jake said, his voice hard. "When the Valdris destroyed Denver, they killed my sister and her children. They killed 2.3 million people in one day. Someone had to fight back." Xylaray's scales rippled, a sign of emotion in her species. "I did not know about Denver until tonight. The report said it was a military target. It was a city full of families. Children went to school there. People worked and laughed and lived there. Your father's ships turned it into glass." Jake's hands clenched into fists. "So yes, I was a teacher. Now I am a soldier. Your empire made that choice for me." The princess was quiet for a long moment. "Tell me about Earth, about your world before the war." Jake almost refused. But something in her voice made him pause. She sounded genuinely curious, not cruel, and talking might reveal information he could use. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Your history. Your culture. Why you fight so hard instead of accepting peace under our rule." Jake laughed bitterly. "Peace under your rule is slavery. Humans have fought wars among ourselves for thousands of years. We know what tyranny looks like. We learned long ago that freedom is worth dying for. Every generation that bows to tyrants makes it harder for the next generation to stand. But so many die. Would it not be better to live under our rule than to die fighting it?" "No," Jake said without hesitation. "My nephew would be 5 years old now if your father had not murdered him. I fight so that somewhere some human child I will never meet can grow up free. That child will never have to bow to an emperor who thinks he owns their life. That is worth any price." Xylaray stared at him. "You truly believe that? Every human believes that. That is why we are winning this war. You are not winning. You are captured. Your forces are scattered. The empire is still strong." Jake smiled grimly. "Then why are you here, Princess? Why do you need to understand me? If the empire is so strong, why has this war lasted 3 years? Why can your vast fleets not defeat one small planet?" She had no answer to that. They talked for over an hour. Xylaray asked about human art, music, and books. Jake told her about Earth's history, about the wars humans fought and the peace they built afterward. He told her about democracy, about people choosing their own leaders instead of being ruled by birth. He told her about freedom, and why it mattered more than safety. When the princess finally left, Amy looked at Jake with raised eyebrows. "What was that about?" "Information gathering," Jake said. "Both ways. She is questioning her beliefs. That makes her dangerous to the Empire. Or it is a trick. Maybe, but I do not think so." She is genuinely confused. She has been taught her whole life that the Empire is right. Now she is seeing evidence that it is wrong. That is hard for anyone. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Jake exercised constantly, keeping his body ready. He meditated, keeping his mind sharp. The guards brought him his requested weapons, a combat knife and a carbon fiber staff from the captured human equipment. They were basic weapons, but Jake knew how to use them. Amy watched him practice. You know they expect you to lose. Good. Low expectations are an advantage. Jake, I am serious. If you die in that arena, I am alone here. I need you. He stopped and looked at her.
If I die, you keep fighting.
You are smart enough to find a way out. You get back to Earth and you tell them everything we learned. You tell Kyle's family about his last words. You tell my Aunt Lisa that I tried my best. Promise me. Amy's eyes were wet. Do not make me promise that. Promise me, Amy. I promise, she whispered. The morning of the arena battle arrived. Guards came to Jake's cell and led him through the massive ship to a transport shuttle. Zealare was there, standing near her father. She looked at Jake as he passed. For just a moment, their eyes met. Jake saw fear in her expression. Not fear of him, but fear for him. The shuttle took them down to Valdris Prime. The Imperial Arena was enormous, a structure that could hold 500,000 people. Jake could hear the crowd roaring even before they landed. The Valdris were excited to see their champion destroy the human warrior. Jake was taken to a preparation room beneath the arena. They gave him light armor and let him check his weapons. The knife was well balanced. The staff was strong. They would have to be enough. A guard came to the door. It is time, human. Jake stood and rolled his shoulders, loosening his muscles. His heart was calm. Fear was normal, but he had learned long ago to use it as fuel rather than let it control him. He walked to the entrance tunnel. Through the gate, he could see the bright lights of the arena and hear the deafening crowd. On the other side of the arena, another gate opened. Commander Zethrak emerged to thunderous applause. He was massive, his scales enhanced with biometallic plating that made him look more machine than living creature. His plasma blade glowed blue-white. His neural whip crackled with energy. Jake gripped his knife and staff. Somewhere in the royal box high above, Princess Zealare was watching. Somewhere on Earth, if they knew he was alive, his people were watching. And somewhere in memory, Kyle Parker was watching too. The gate before him opened. Jake Morrison walked into the arena to face a champion. He was not going to die today. He was going to win. The arena floor was covered in red sand. Jake's boots left prints as he walked toward the center. Above him, 500,000 Valdris filled the seats, their voices creating a wall of sound that shook the air. Holographic cameras floated everywhere, broadcasting the fight to the entire empire. Jake looked small under the lights. His armor was basic, his weapon simple. Across from him, Commander Zethrak stood 8 feet tall, his biometallic scales gleaming like polished steel. The Valdris champion raised his plasma blade to the crowd, and they roared their approval. In the royal box, Princess Zealare sat beside her father. Her claws dug into the armrest. She had spent 3 days reading about human combat tactics. She knew things the crowd did not. Humans were persistence hunters who evolved to chase prey across vast distances. Their endurance exceeded most species. Their ability to throw objects with deadly accuracy was almost unique in the galaxy. Most important, humans could remain calm and think clearly even in extreme danger. Emperor Corvin raised his hand. The crowd fell silent. His voice boomed across the arena. Let the combat begin. Zethrak charged immediately. His plasma blade hummed as he swung it in a deadly arc. The weapon could cut through starship armor. It would slice Jake in half if it connected, but Jake was not there. He dove sideways, rolling across the sand and coming up 10 feet away. Zethrak spun and charged again. Again, Jake moved before the blade arrived. The human was faster than the Valdris expected. The crowd cheered at first, expecting their champion to catch the human quickly. But minutes passed and Jake remained untouched. He kept moving, forcing Zethrak to chase him across the arena floor. Every time the champion swung his weapons, Jake was somewhere else. Zealare watched with growing tension. She understood what Jake was doing. He was refusing to fight Zethrak's fight. The champion wanted a direct battle, warrior against warrior, strength against strength. But Jake would not give him that. Instead, the human used his speed and smaller size to his advantage. Jake grabbed a handful of sand and threw it at Zethrak's eyes as the champion closed in. The Valdris warrior stumbled, temporarily blinded. Jake struck with his staff, hitting the back of Zethrak's knee joint. The champion staggered but did not fall. His armor was too strong. The crowd's cheers turned to confused murmurs. This was not the glorious combat they expected. The human was fighting like a coward, running and throwing sand. Where was the honor? But honor did not matter to Jake Morrison. Survival mattered. Victory mattered. He had learned long ago that dead warriors did not care about honor. Zethrak grew angry. His attacks became wilder, fueled by rage rather than training. He swung his plasma blade in wide arcs that burned the air. His neural whip cracked across the sand, leaving glowing scorch marks. But every attack missed. Jake moved between the weapons like water flowing around rocks. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Zethrak was breathing heavily now. The biometallic armor was strong but heavy. The energy weapons drained power with every use. The champion was slowing down. Jake stayed calm. His breathing was controlled. He had run marathons in training that lasted hours. This was just another endurance test. He watched Zethrak's movements, looking for patterns, waiting for the right moment. The crowd grew restless. This was not entertaining. The humans should be dead by now. Why was their champion struggling against such a small opponent? Emperor Corvin leaned forward in his seat, his eyes narrow. What is happening? Why has Zethrak not killed him yet? Silaray answered quietly. The human is fighting smart. He knows he cannot win a direct battle, so he is making Zethrak exhaust himself. It is tactical brilliance. It is cowardice, her father snapped. No, Silaray said, surprising herself with her boldness. It is the difference between fighting for glory and fighting to win. Zethrak wants to look impressive. The human wants to survive. That makes him more dangerous. In the arena, Jake saw his opening. Zethrak made an overhead slash that left his side exposed for half a second. Jake dropped his staff and pulled his combat knife. He moved forward like a striking snake. The blade found the gap between armor plates at Zethrak's hip. Jake twisted and pulled, opening a deep cut. Purple blood flowed from the wound. The champion roared in pain and backhanded Jake, sending him flying across the sand. Jake landed hard, the impact knocking the air from his lungs. Pain shot through his ribs. But he forced himself to roll and get back to his feet. Blood ran from his nose. His vision blurred for a moment, then cleared. Zethrak touched his wounded side, his hand coming away purple with blood. Rage filled his eyes. He charged again, but slower now, favoring his injured side. Jake moved away, staying just out of reach. The wound was not fatal, but it was weakening the champion. 5 more minutes passed. Zethrak's movements became sluggish. His plasma blade flickered, power running low. Jake pressed his advantage, making the Valdris warrior turn and chase, burning more energy. Then Zethrak stumbled. His wounded leg gave out for just a moment. Jake attacked. He came in low under the champion's guard. His knife found the gap in the neck armor, the weak point he had spotted when studying Zethrak's armor design. The blade cut deep. Purple blood sprayed across the red sand. Zethrak dropped his weapons and grabbed his neck, trying to stop the bleeding. His eyes were wide with shock. This was not supposed to happen. He was the champion. He had never lost. Jake stepped back, breathing hard. The crowd was silent. The impossible had happened. The small human had defeated the Empire's greatest warrior. Zethrak fell to his knees. Blood poured between his fingers. Jake turned away, believing the fight was over. It was a mistake. The Valdris champion pulled a concealed plasma pistol from his armor. He aimed it at Jake's back. In the royal box, Princess Silaray saw what was happening. Horror filled her. The fight was over. Pulling a hidden weapon violated every rule of arena combat. But Zethrak was beyond caring about rules. He wanted revenge. Not him, father. I'm afraid of that human warrior. The scream tore from Silaray's throat as she leaped to her feet. But she was too far away. She could only watch. Zethrak fired. The plasma bolt burned through the air. Jake's combat instincts saved his life. He heard the weapon charge and moved. The bolt meant for his heart struck his shoulder instead. The impact spun him around and dropped him to the sand. The arena erupted in chaos. The crowd was screaming. Guards rushed toward the combat floor. Emperor Corvin stood, his face dark with fury. A warrior who violated the sacred rules of the arena deserved death. But Jake Morrison was not finished. Pain burned through his shoulder, but his mind stayed clear. He grabbed his knife from where it had fallen. Zethrak was turning the pistol to fire again. Jake's arm moved. Years of training, thousands of hours of practice made the throw perfect. The combat knife flew across the distance and buried itself in Zethrak's throat. The champion dropped the pistol and fell backward. His body hit the sand and did not move again. Medical teams rushed into the arena from both sides. Some went to Zethrak, though he was clearly dead. Others ran to Jake. The human tried to stand, but his wounded shoulder would not support him. He fell to his knees in the red sand. Princess Zyla was running. She did not remember making the decision. She just ran from the royal box, pushing past guards, ignoring her father's shouts. She had to reach the arena floor. She had to know if the humans still lived. Jake's vision was fading. The plasma burn had cauterized the wound, but the shock was overwhelming his system. He saw medical personnel surrounding him. He saw Valdris faces staring at him in disbelief, and he saw a copper-scaled figure pushing through the crowd, her eyes wide with something that looked like fear. The princess reached him just as the medics lifted him onto a stretcher. She looked down at his face, at the human who had done the impossible. "Stay alive," she whispered in her language, not sure if he could even hear her. "Please stay alive." Jake's eyes focused on her for just a moment. He tried to speak, but no words came. Then his eyes closed and everything went dark. The arena was in total chaos. The crowd argued and shouted. Some demanded the humans' execution for killing their champion. Others argued that Zethrak had violated the sacred rules and deserved his death. The Empire had never seen anything like this. Emperor Corvin stood in his box, watching his daughter kneel beside the wounded human. He saw something in her face that troubled him deeply. His daughter, the princess of the Valdris Empire, looked at the human warrior with concern that bordered on something else. Something dangerous. The medics took Jake away on the stretcher. Zyla watched them go, her hands shaking. She had just screamed in front of the entire empire that she was afraid of the human warrior. But that was not quite true. She was not afraid of him. She was afraid of what his courage meant. She was afraid that everything she believed about her father's empire might be a lie. And most of all, she was afraid that she could not let him die. Jake woke 3 days later in a medical facility. His first thought was that he should be dead. His second thought was that being alive might be worse. Valdris did not show mercy to enemies. There had to be a reason they saved him. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through his shoulder, though it was much less than he expected. He looked down and saw that the plasma wound had been completely healed. New skin covered where the burn had been. Only a faint scar remained. The door opened. Jake tensed, ready to fight despite his weakness. But the person who entered was Princess Zyla, not a guard. She carried a data tablet and wore simple clothes. Her copper scales looked dull, as if she had not been sleeping well. She stopped when she saw he was awake. "You should rest. The medical regeneration takes energy from your body. You will be weak for several more days. Why am I alive?" Jake asked directly. Zyla sat in a chair near his bed. "Because I convinced my father not to kill you. You defeated his champion in fair combat. Then you survived an assassination attempt. Executing you now would make you a martyr. It would prove that humans are right when they say the Valdris are without honor. So I am a political prisoner now. You are more than that." She activated the tablet. "I have a proposal. The war is not going well for the Empire. Your people have cost us more ships, more soldiers, and more resources than any war in our history. My father will not admit it publicly, but he is looking for a way to end this conflict." Jake studied her carefully. "What kind of proposal?" "A diplomatic mission to Earth. I will go personally with you as my guide. We will negotiate for peace. If we can reach an agreement, this war ends, and if I refuse, then you and Lieutenant Chen will be executed, along with the 3,000 human prisoners of war we hold on various worlds." Her voice was steady, but her eyes showed pain. "I do not want to threaten you, Jake Morrison, but this is the only path I see." Jake was quiet for a long moment. "You called me by my name. You have earned that right. You fought with courage. Even my father admits this, though he would never say it publicly." She leaned forward. "I have spent 3 days arguing with him. Half the Empire thinks you should be executed. The other half thinks you should be freed for defeating a warrior who broke sacred laws. My father is caught between these positions. This diplomatic mission is his compromise. How do I know this is not a trick, that you will not just take me to Earth and use me to get past our defenses?" Zyla touched the tablet again. Images appeared in the air between them. "Because I am giving you this. Military intelligence that proves the Empire cannot sustain this war much longer.
Supply lines are breaking.
3 subject species are showing signs of rebellion. The economic strain is enormous. In 1 more year, the Empire will face collapse if the war continues." Jake looked at the data. If it was accurate, it changed everything. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I want you to trust me, and because I have questions that only you can answer." She paused, her scales rippling with emotion. "I watched you in the arena. I saw you refuse to give up even when death was certain. I have been taught my entire life that the Empire is right, that we bring order to chaos, that other species need our rule. But you fought like someone who had something worth dying for. I need to understand what that is. Over the next hour they talked. Really talked. Not the careful conversation of enemies, but something more honest. Jake told her about Earth, about human history, about the concept of freedom and why it mattered more than safety. He told her about his sister Claire and her children, about Kyle Parker and his family, about all the people who had died because the Valdris demanded submission. Sela Ray listened with growing horror. She had never thought about the people the Empire conquered as individuals with families, dreams, and lives that mattered. They were just subjects, resources, numbers, and reports, but Jake made them real. My father destroyed your home, she said quietly. He killed millions of your people. How can you even sit here talking to me instead of trying to kill me? Because killing you would not bring them back. And because I think you are starting to understand something important. The Empire is wrong. Not just strategically wrong, but morally wrong. You are starting to see that. If I believe that, then everything I am is built on lies. Yes, Jake said simply. That is hard. But it is also the truth. The diplomatic mission was approved 2 days later. Jake and Amy Chen were released from detention. They were given quarters on a Valdris diplomatic ship, the Path of Reason. The ship was smaller than the warship that captured them, designed for speed rather than combat. Princess Zyla Ray led the delegation, along with 3 Valdris diplomats and a security team. The journey to Earth would take 2 weeks. Jake used that time to prepare Amy for what they would face. The reception on Earth would not be friendly. Humans did not trust the Valdris, and they would not trust Jake for bringing them. During the journey, Jake and Zyla Ray spent hours together. She asked him to teach her about human culture. He showed her recordings of human music, from classical symphonies to modern compositions. He told her about human literature, about stories of heroes and ordinary people facing impossible odds. He explained democracy, about people choosing their own leaders. One night they stood in the observation deck watching the stars. Zyla Ray seemed troubled. "Do you hate me?" she asked suddenly. Jake considered the question seriously. "No, I hate what your father's empire has done. I hate the system that made you believe conquest was right. But you are not that system. You are choosing to question it. That takes courage, I'm afraid," she admitted. "I have been taught my entire life that my father is wise, that the empire brings order. But I watched you in that arena. I saw what desperation looks like, what courage looks like, and I wonder if everything I believe is wrong." "Not everything," Jake said. "Your people built amazing things. Your technology, your cities, your art. Those are real achievements, but you built them on the backs of conquered species. That is the part that is wrong. Greatness that requires others to suffer is not really greatness. What if we changed? What if the empire became something different? Then you would have to give up power. Really give it up. Not just promise to be nicer rulers. You would have to let the species you conquered go free. Your father would have to step down. That would be the hardest thing anyone could do." Zyla Ray looked out at the stars. "I do not know if he would ever do that. Then the war will continue until the empire falls. That is the only other option." When they reached Earth orbit, the reception was exactly as hostile as Jake predicted. Admiral Lisa Morrison, Jake's aunt and a senior commander of the Earth Defense Force, met them at Luna Station. She was a tall woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She looked at the Valdris delegation with barely controlled fury. "Give me one reason not to arrest all of you right now," she said. Jake stepped forward. "Because they are here to negotiate peace, Admiral. And because Princess Zyla Ray has information that could end this war." Lisa looked at her nephew. "You better be right about this, Jake. Because if this is a trick, you just helped the enemy walk right up to our front door." The negotiations began in a conference room on Luna Station. They were difficult from the first moment. Human diplomats wanted reparations for Denver and the other destroyed cities. They wanted the Valdris to withdraw from contested systems. They wanted guarantees that no future aggression would occur. The Valdris diplomats refused almost everything. They could not admit weakness without looking like failures to their own people. The talks nearly collapsed a dozen times in the first week. Then Zyla Ray did something unprecedented. In a session that was being broadcast to both human and Valdris populations, she stood and spoke directly to the cameras. "I am Princess Zyla Ray of the Valdris Empire, and I have something to say that my father will not like. The Empire has committed crimes against humanity. We destroyed Denver and 12 other cities, killing millions of civilians. We did this on purpose to break human will. It was wrong. It was evil. And I am ashamed. The room fell into shocked silence. No Valdris royal had ever admitted to wrongdoing publicly. Xylaray continued. I cannot undo what was done. I cannot bring back the dead. But I can tell you the truth. The Empire is not as strong as we pretend. We cannot win this war, and we should not have started it. I am asking humanity for forgiveness, knowing I may never receive it. The broadcast reached both civilizations simultaneously. On Earth, there were calls for justice and vengeance. In the Valdris Empire, there was shock and rage at the princess's betrayal. Emperor Corvin sent an immediate message recalling his daughter and declaring her a traitor. Xylaray read the message and made her choice. She refused to return. She requested asylum on Earth, becoming the first Valdris in history to defect. Admiral Lisa Morrison looked at Jake. What have you done? Jake watched Xylaray, who stood alone now, rejected by her own people, uncertain if humans would accept her. I think I just helped start something that might actually bring peace. The war did not end immediately, but Princess Xylaray's defection changed everything. The information she provided allowed human forces to strike at key Valdris supply depots and command centers. More importantly, her public admission of imperial crimes cracked the political foundation that held the Empire together. Other species under Valdris rule watched a royal princess admit to atrocities. They saw her ask for forgiveness. They heard her say the Empire was wrong. Within 3 months, 2 subject species rebelled. Within 6 months, 3 of the 12 systems under Valdris control declared independence. Emperor Corvin, facing collapse on multiple fronts, finally agreed to real peace negotiations. The treaty took another 6 months to finalize. It was harsh for the Valdris. They withdrew from 4 systems. They paid reparations to humanity and the species they had wronged. They submitted to monitoring by a neutral council of species to prevent future aggression. The mighty empire survived, but as a shadow of what it had been. Jake Morrison, promoted to colonel, became humanity's primary liaison for the ongoing peace process. He worked alongside Xylaray, who spent her time helping Earth understand Valdris culture and politics. Their partnership was strange to many. The warrior and the princess, former enemies, now working together. Amy Chen led the intelligence teams that processed information from Valdris defectors and refugees. Hundreds of Valdris had followed Xylaray's example, leaving the Empire for a chance at different lives. The cultural exchange was difficult. Centuries of propaganda and fear existed on both sides, but slowly understanding began to grow. 2 years after the war ended, a memorial ceremony was held at the site of Denver. The city had been rebuilt, though the scars of orbital bombardment still marked the landscape. A massive memorial wall listed the names of all 2.3 million people who died that day. Claire Morrison and her children were among them. Jake stood before the wall with his aunt, Admiral Lisa Morrison. Around them, thousands gathered. Survivors who had escaped Denver before the attack, families of those who had not, soldiers who fought to avenge the dead, politicians who worked to build peace. Princess Xylaray was there too. It had taken months of debate before human authorities allowed her to attend. Many people did not want her there. They saw her as a symbol of the empire that destroyed their loved ones. But Jake had argued for her presence. She needed to face what her father had done, and the people needed to see that even a Valdris could acknowledge the truth. When Xylaray stepped to the podium to speak, security forces tensed. But she had no weapons, no guards. She was alone before a crowd that had every reason to hate her. Her voice was steady but quiet. I am Princess Xylaray. My father, Emperor Corvin, gave the order to destroy this city. I was not there. I did not fire the weapons, but I benefited from the empire that committed this crime. I lived in luxury built on conquest. I accepted lies about the righteousness of our rule. For that, I bear responsibility. She paused, looking at the names carved in the memorial wall. I cannot ask for forgiveness. That would be too much. But I can promise you this. I will spend the rest of my life making sure that what happened here is never forgotten. That the voices of those who died are heard. That their sacrifice means something. That no other city, human or otherwise, ever suffers this fate again. The crowd was silent when she finished. No applause, no cheers. But then slowly one person started clapping. Then another. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, but acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that she was trying. Jake met her eyes from where he stood. He nodded slightly. She had done well. The road ahead was still long, but this was a start. That evening, Jake and Xylare stood together on a balcony overlooking the rebuilt city. Construction lights sparkled like stars. New buildings rose where old ones had fallen. Life continued. Do you regret it? Jake asked. Everything you gave up. Your title, your family, your entire world. Xylare thought carefully before answering. I regret not questioning sooner. I regret every day I accepted comfortable lies. But leaving the Empire? Standing against my father? No, that was the first real choice I ever made. The first thing I did that actually mattered. Many humans will never trust you, I know. And they are right. Trust must be earned. I have a long road ahead. You will not walk it alone, Jake said. 5 years passed. The galaxy changed in ways no one expected. Humanity emerged as a major power, respected not just for their military strength but for their diplomatic efforts. They helped former Valdris subject species establish independent governments. They shared technology and resources. They proved that power could be used to help rather than control. The Valdris Empire reformed under new leadership. Emperor Corvin was removed by his own council, exiled to a remote world where he could do no more harm. The new government struggled to adjust from conquest to cooperation. It was slow and painful, but progress happened. Jake Morrison, now a general, stood beside Xylare at the opening of a joint military academy. Human and Valdris soldiers would train together here, learning from each other. The first class stood in formation, young people from both species who had never known war. A young Valdris cadet approached them nervously. She had scales the color of bronze and eyes full of curiosity. General Morrison, is it true you fought Commander Zethrak in single combat? Jake smiled. It is true, but the real courage that day was not mine. He gestured to Xylare. It was hers. I was fighting for my life, doing what I was trained to do. She fought against everything she had been taught to believe. She fought against her own father, against an entire empire. That takes courage I cannot fully understand. The princess, still uncomfortable with praise, changed the subject. What do you hope to do after your training, cadet? I want to be a navigator on a deep space exploration vessel. I want to chart unknown systems and discover new worlds. The young Valdris smiled shyly. Not to conquer, to explore. After the cadet left, Jake and Xylare walked through the academy grounds. Students from both species trained together, their differences slowly becoming less important than their shared goals. Do you ever think about Kyle? Xylare asked. She had learned about Jake's fallen friend over the years, the sergeant who died so others could escape. Every day, Jake admitted. He died protecting civilians, protecting the future. I think he would be proud of what we built. His daughter Sophie is 17 now. She wants to join the diplomatic corps. She wants to help build bridges between species. That would have made Kyle smile. They reached the edge of the academy grounds where they could see the city beyond. 2 suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Are we friends, Jake Morrison? Xylare asked suddenly. By human standards, I mean. I still do not fully understand your customs. Jake considered the question. Friends might not be the right word. We have been through too much for something that simple. We are partners. We are allies. We are 2 people who chose to build something better than what we inherited. Maybe that is more than friendship. I like that, she said. A transmission arrived on Jake's communication device. He read it and smiled. It was from Earth Defense Command, announcing a joint human-Valdris deep space exploration initiative. The next generation would explore together, not as conquerors, but as partners seeking knowledge. Come on, Jake said. We have a meeting with the council. They want to discuss the exploration plans. As they walked back toward the academy building, Xylare looked at the soldiers training in the distance, human and Valdris working together, learning from each other. 5 years ago, such a thing would have been impossible. Now it was normal. Do you think we changed the galaxy? She asked. I think we gave it a chance to change, Jake replied. That is all anyone can do. Years later, when historians studied the war between humanity and the Valdris Empire, they focused on the battles, the technology, the political decisions. But those who lived through it knew the truth. The war ended not because of weapons or tactics, but because one warrior refused to kneel and one princess chose truth over comfort. Jake Morrison proved that courage was not about size or strength. It was about refusing to give up even when hope seemed lost. It was about fighting for something bigger than yourself. Princess Xylaray proved that change was possible, that people raised in systems of oppression could still choose to be better, that admitting wrong was harder than any battle. Together, they proved that even the bitterest enemies could find peace if they had courage enough to try. The human warrior who survived the arena became a symbol of resistance. The alien princess who defected became a symbol of redemption. Their story was told across the galaxy, not as a tale of war, but as proof that individuals could change the course of history. And somewhere, in the rebuilt city of Denver, a memorial wall stood with 2.3 million names, a reminder of what was lost and why peace mattered. Kyle Parker's name was there, along with Claire Morrison and her children. They did not live to see the peace they died for, but their sacrifice made it possible. That was worth everything.